So I want to welcome Casey to the stage. And I also was from Texas. And when I heard Casey's talk at Harvard, which I'll let you tell a little bit more, I was so inspired that there was this young person out there in the world who was talking about purpose and meaning so forcefully and so actively. And so I want to welcome you here. And I thought it would be a great place to start would just be to talk about like MBAs across America and what it does, just so that they know a little bit and and then I'll go into a little bit of your background because you went to Yale and Harvard, but you're not the traditional Yale and Harvard student. Thank God.
I made it out.
You made it out, and with purpose, and with the purpose.
Right. So MBAs Across America is, in essence, a domestic Peace Corps for MBAs. We take teams of students from top business schools across the country and send them on a road trip across America to work with entrepreneurs in places like Detroit, New Orleans, rural Montana, really that need mission and purpose-driven entrepreneurs to succeed. And they do this over the course of a summer and help these entrepreneurs bring their dreams to life. And it really started 3 years ago, not as an idea for an organization, but an idea for a life. You know, 3 classmates and I, in our first year at Harvard Business School, we're sort of standing around about 1:30 in the morning at a dinner party. You could imagine our mental state at the time. And we said, what are we going to do with our summer? And nobody wanted to go sit in a cubicle at Goldman Sachs. And so we said, well, what if we got in an RV and drove across the country to see what was happening and see if we could put these overpriced MBAs to use, not just to make a buck, but to make a difference. And that question took us 8,000 miles across the country and showed up the first week of this journey in 2013 in Detroit, the week before the city went bankrupt. And which was not our fault. Anytime Harvard MBAs show up, it's like a mass layoff or bankruptcy. And we were working with a barber. We were working with a barber named Sebastian Jackson. He was a 26-year-old guy from Flint who started cutting hair because his mother suffered from mental illness and he needed a way to provide for himself and his family. Got really good at it, decided to open a barber shop. And right there on the campus of Wayne State. And in the process, he heard about the Gulf oil spill. And there was an organization in San Francisco using hair to clean up oil in the Gulf. And Sebastian said, well, I've got a lot of hair. Why don't I, use this to be of service in some way? So he starts sending off these packets of hair. This organization is really exciting. And a few months later, an organization says, well, Sebastian, thank you so much, but we don't need any more hair, please stop sending it to us. But he had really caught this bug of using what otherwise would be waste to make a difference. So anyway, long story short, he found that hair is also a powerful accelerant for compost, and about 2 or 3 times more powerful than manure. And Detroit has lost half of its urban canopy in the past decade, and so now Sebastian takes all the hair from his clients, recycles it to plant trees in some of Detroit's most blighted neighborhoods. And so we go into this barbershop, and having taken no classes on barbershop management and business school, but with this question inside of how can we be useful? And we worked with him over the course of a week to help him, recruit a new team, set up simple processes, connect him to a larger network of support. And he called us a few months later and said, when you got here, I was on track to do $6,000 of revenue a month. Now I'm on track to do $18,000 of revenue a month. I've raised $100,000 from a local investor because you helped me articulate my business plan for the first time. And that guy you connected me to, this community organizer in Detroit, we partnered and tore down an abandoned home and used the wood to renovate the barbershop. And so now the social club looks totally different. Now, I tell this story because it explains what this movement has become now, 80,000 more miles, 80-some entrepreneurs, 70-some MBAs. Because the lesson was not that all the helpless people of America needed were more to be bequeathed with Harvard MBAs. It was quite the opposite, that there were extraordinary people like Sebastian in the nooks and crannies of the country that didn't have a single diploma or a single spot on a conference stage, but all they needed was a little wind at their back. And
Get
how
someone
could
to
we,
listen and work
exactly,
with them.
how could we do that? So anyway, that's what got us on the road, and that's what's kept us there these 3 years.
Got it. And I'm curious how your upbringing in Texas, because you had a somewhat challenging upbringing in Texas. How did your upbringing in Texas impact how you see the world and the work that you do now?
Well, you know, I was 12, and I went home from school one day, and my grandmother sat me down, and she told me that my mother, who was sort of my best friend growing up, and who suffered from bipolar, suffered from mental illness, and had been in a rehab facility, a mental rehab facility, and that she had been discharged, and she didn't come home. And so that day sort of turned into a week and a month, and wound up being a decade almost, when I didn't know whether my mother was alive or dead. And you know, she had always been in many ways my dream defender. You know, I'd sit on the floor of the restroom while she was putting on her makeup, you know, and tell her about all my grand plans. And say, you know, Mom, I want to be a firefighter, you know. And she'd say, well, yeah, baby, you can do that for sure. And I come back not too long after and say, well, you know, Mom, I want to be a chef, like Julia Childs, you know. And she said, yeah, you can do that, of course. And so I got very bold, and I came in one day, I said, Mom, I want to be Martin Luther King. And she said, well, baby, that's not a job, you know. But I'm sure you could do it if you tried. So in many ways, when she left, she took my dreams with her. And just before, I suppose, I gave up, this sort of divine conspiracy happened. And folks from random corners of my community, many of them perfect strangers, they stepped in and they rolled up their sleeves and they raised their hands and they said, hey kid, how can we help? And that's really the only thing that kept me alive. It's definitely the only thing that got me in a place like Yale or a place like Harvard, which I've spent the past 10 years very polar opposite of the way I spent the first 18 years of my life. And what I've seen is you know, really in many ways America from the very bottom to the very top, and it's quite frightening on both ends, to be honest with you. But what I'm most convinced of is that it should not take a divine conspiracy for people to have a shot in this country. Yet it does. And so really the work of MBAs across America is not rocket science. We have not created the Google algorithm. We're just trying to say, how do you, in some way, give people a shot in a country that has, from the very beginning, written a check that says, you shall have a shot. And we haven't been able to cash it yet. So I think it's due time to try.
And what's the response been from the MBA graduate students? I mean, a lot of people look at the younger generation and think they were just wanting to take selfies on Instagram, and you know, they're just like consumed with this kind of me and me world. What is the response you get from people when you come and try and recruit or offer this opportunity to Harvard MBAs who probably can get a lot more money not spending their summers driving across the country?
Well, yeah, we recruit with the take on the Ernest Shackleton ad for this Arctic expedition. We say MBAs wanted for hazardous journey, low wages, no cubicle, returning unchanged, doubtful. You know, it's very fitting you asked that question about the generation in somewhat of a skeptical tone on 9/11, because you know, if you look at my generation, I mean, you all really screwed us over, you know. I mean, everything, every institution, every idea, every system that we inherited has been compromised.
Yeah, definitely.
In many ways. You know, we were, most of us in high school, middle school, some of us even, when 9/11 happened. You know, I was an intern at Lehman Brothers in the summer of 2008. I was a junior policy person in Washington in 2009. You know, there's very little that prior generations were able to take for granted that we have the luxury of taking for granted. So, you know, you look at the social media obsession of our generation, or the Facebook obsession, or the celebrity obsession, and you say, on the one hand, well, we need a little entertainment just to get up in the morning, you know. I mean, it's a very hazardous exercise. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, the truth is that the greatest, most passionate social movement in this country right now, joining the most successful social movement in the world in the past decade, talking about the Arab Spring, and the Black Lives Matter movement, if we're talking here domestically, happened on Twitter. Okay, so you know, the fact is that Bobby Kennedy was speaking in South Africa in 1968 and said, you know, the world demands the quality of youth, not a time of life, but a state of mind, a temper of the will. Right? And I think our generation is quite desperate to use any tool at our disposal, whether it is a tweet or a Vine post or a Snapchat that's going to disappear 15 seconds from now, to find some sense of order in the chaos that we have inherited, and find some sense also of community. Right. I was in Dallas a few weeks ago, and I was giving a talk to a very stuffy group of business leaders. You don't have to look far in Dallas to find stuffy business leaders. It's my hometown, so I can talk about it.
Lubbock, same.
Yeah. And there were 300 kids sparkled in between this room of 800 people. And I mentioned something about transgender rights. And you can sort of see the faces of the adults kind of go, why are you talking about that in the high, it might have been the Omni or something, you know, it's not an Omni conversation. And a young girl came up to me after this talk and she said, thank you so much for just mentioning the word, because nobody's ever done that here. She's probably 16 years old. Wow. So I think what young people are fantastic at, sometimes too much so, is saying the things that are unmentionable in ways that perhaps are inappropriate. Yeah. As Samantha Power would say, always ask the impertinent question. Yeah. So anyway, I'm very optimistic about our generation. You know, we're really up Craps Creek at the moment. But you know.
What do you see as positive signs? So there's the Black Lives Matter movement. There is definitely environmental rising consciousness, it feels like. Yet in the political domain, it feels like it's just same old, same. I mean, we have a Bush and a Clinton running for president again. We just seem to be repeating ourselves again and again. No, actually we have Trump now, so that's different.
Thank God, yes.
Where do you see signs of hope, or where do you see signs of things that you feel like are signposts, maybe of efforts that we feel like could be guides to where we could go?
You know, I used to think that if somebody had a Yale degree or Harvard degree, or was called the President of the United States, or the head of the Chamber of Commerce, or the CEO of Coke or Pepsi, that you really ought to respect these folks because they've got the answer.
Not so.
And it's actually quite the opposite that I found. I was very depressed about the country when I was in Washington. I was very depressed about the country when I was reading about it in the news and sitting at HBS intellectualizing it. And then you go out into the heart of the country and you're in White Sulphur Springs, Montana, or you're down in New Orleans on the lower Ninth Ward, and you're finding people who really don't give a damn about what the president's going to do. They've got to figure out their lives for themselves. And people are not waiting for folks in authority to give them a green light to figure out the mess of their lives. And that's what makes me deeply optimistic. One of my dear friends is helping out, working with the Black Lives Matter movement. And what's optimistic about it is that for the first time in my lifetime, and I met a lot of the folks who were in Occupy, and I met a lot of the folks, even being from Texas, who were in the Tea Party, and they're very upset about things. For the first time, there is some significant minority of people who are willing to die for something. That changes the calculus of everything. And it might come to that in this century, in our lifetime, in our generation. And they're not folks who went and got a PhD in sociology from Harvard. They're 18-year-old kids from Baltimore. I think that's particularly interesting, and it speaks to the resilience of ordinary people over the brilliance of elites.
And it seems the one thing that social media has done is now that people have cameras to document stuff that before could happen under the radar.
Oh my God!
And now they're showing it, and we're seeing. I think the public is forced to see some of what happened in the inner cities that in the past we could be in denial of.
And they're seeing that what's happening in the inner city is not an inner city problem, right? That what happened on Wall Street is not a Wall Street problem. We're all in this mess together. I was just saying the other day, if we had to wait on the New York Times to tell us what was happening, we'd be dead on arrival. Not because they have bad intentions, but because the rules of the game have changed a bit. But when I think about the great sense of optimism, right? Liberation is, I heard a great definition. Liberation is an understanding of the truth, so powerful there's no turning back from it. I thought it was fantastic. That might have been Bell Hooks. I thought it was a fantastic definition because it clarifies what our job is as people who are trying to move the world at least half a standard deviation from where it is to where we think it ought to go. If we just help people see the truth a little bit, shine a little light into the darkness, then maybe that might be a very powerful first step into liberation.
And it seems like, so you've got to see both the poverty of Texas and then the elite top schools, and you said both sides don't look so good. How do we shine the light on both situations so that we find some middle ground versus living in complete denial of the other? And it's almost like as long as the two are not connected in some form, of course the policies that get created are never going to come from a sense of community. They're going to come from, I got this, I don't have this, and the two just stay apart.
Yeah, you keep teeing up my best stories.
Oh, yeah.
I was at the.
We did not prepare this.
No, it's fine. We didn't. I was at the HBS Club of New York.
Harvard Business School.
Yes, the Harvard Business School Club of New York annual leadership dinner in maybe March, and it was at the Museum of Natural History. It was about 500 people. They were honoring Mayor Bloomberg and a couple other billionaires, and it was a very very self-congratulatory evening. It's like we are the leaders of society, and we have done such great things, and
made a lot of money.
Fantastic philanthropists and such and such and such, and in this room of 500 people, it probably represented between net worth and assets under management about $500 billion or so, probably rough estimate. Not, I did not add very much to that number, but everybody was so happy with themselves and the work that they had done, and it's not to say that they shouldn't be. But the next morning, I went up to Harlem, 127th and Adam Clayton Powell. I was working, meeting with an entrepreneur that we work with that runs an urban farming company that serves with youth development. And works with an elementary school, and he's telling me about the kids in this program. 100% of them below the poverty line. 40% of them bring all the things that they own with them in a book bag to this program because they move from homeless shelter to homeless shelter throughout the week. About 20% of them, the only meal that they get every day is the meal that they get from his program, from Tony's program, Harlem Grown. And he's telling me about this 8-year-old girl, Epiphany, that came to the program with, matted hair and dingy clothes and, bed bugs. And, only through this program did she find some sense of safety and nourishment, self-confidence. And the program is working. And I said, well, Tony, what's the challenge? He says, I'm not taking a salary. I am I retired from driving black cars, and I took all that I had to start this program because I knew it was necessary, and it's working, but I'm just struggling for resources. And I got back on the train going back to Brooklyn, and I said, I don't want to live in a country where I spend one night in one room where 400 people have $500 billion. And the next morning go 20 blocks up the road where a guy is not taking a salary to try to get an 8-year-old girl her only meal of the day. It doesn't take rocket science to figure that out. If we accept that as a tolerable condition, then we've already lost. I think it is due time for an awakening of our consciousness in this country, to see that the rules and the language of markets, that there always has to be a business case for things, is deeply corrosive to our souls and deeply corrosive to our society. I don't care if there's a business case for an 8-year-old girl getting a meal. I actually do not care. I don't care if there's a business case. And I'm going on and on, I'm already over time, I don't care if there's a business case for my niece being treated equally. If it's bad for the economy, then screw the economy. I care more about my niece, and I care more about her friends who will grow up as women in this society than I do about our gross domestic product. We've got to have a rejiggering of our values. And that just comes from contact. You don't have to read a book. Just go to Harlem and see and give them some money. It's not that complicated. But anyway.
So last question. How do we support you?
Well, leave this room and go somewhere that makes you uncomfortable. And see what it is that you have, some skill, some talent, some passion, something that you can bring to bear to make that problem that you saw a little better.
That's great.
Don't give me any money. Don't give my organization any money. Don't give me any press. Go and find somebody like Tony in Harlem who's doing something that works and is struggling for resources. And you be a bridge between all of the talent and resources that you have and people like Tony who need them. I'll be fine. I'm gonna leave here. I've got water. You
got a good. You got a good degree.
Hey, if I want to pay my student loans, that'd be great. But aside from that, don't take comfort in helping people like me.
Yeah, got it.
Go be uncomfortable.
All right.
And I think
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And your next steps, run MBA across America and keep doing your thing, or is there something else that's knocking at your door?
Well, my immediate next step is to try not to be late to this next donor meeting that I've got.
All right, so we should
because I do need him to help me. I need him to write a very large check to me. And so hopefully he's not gone by the time I get there. But,
All right, we'll let you go.
No. Our immediate next step actually is to put ourselves out of business. It's not about scaling the organization. I've been very disturbed. People have started coming to me saying, oh, well, how do we make sure that we can get into MBAs across America? And it's very bizarre because nobody thought this was a good idea when we first started. Nobody gave us any money. We crowdfunded, we drove our own cars, and now we've become gatekeepers for road trips. It makes no sense to me. So we codified everything that we've done and gave it to people. And said, you do it yourself. The person called me from Finland and said, when is MBAs Across America coming to Finland? I said, I'm not coming to Finland. I got no interest in Finland, The young people of Finland are going to have to say Finland, not me.
Right.
So we're trying to liberate the knowledge so that people can do it themselves and make it better. and we're trying to institutionalize our work in business schools so that it is a core part of curriculum. So we're launching a course at HBS this fall. We'll see how that goes. It's not about building a monopoly on impact. So if we are out of business in a year, I will be deeply satisfied, partially because I don't have to go ask this guy for money.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.